I have always believed that danger does not arrive with noise. It comes quietly, with soft voices, with concerned smiles, with people who suddenly start calling you dad more often than usual. The first time my son mentioned the nursing home was on a Tuesday morning, March 12, 2024, at exactly 9:40 a.m. I remember because I was standing in the kitchen, waiting for the kettle to click off, watching the condensation gather on the window above the sink. The weather had turned damp that week. One of those gray stretches where time feels slower, heavier. Dad, Daniel said, leaning against the counter, as if he owned the place. Have you ever thought about, somewhere safer? Safer. I poured the boiling water into my chipped porcelain mug, the one Eleanor had bought me in 1998 from a roadside shop in Vermont. The handle had a small crack, but I trusted it more than I trusted most people. I've lived here for 36 years, I said. If it wasn't safe, I imagine I'd be dead by now. He smiled, that tight, polite smile of his, corporate, practiced, the kind he used in meetings when he wanted something signed. It's not about that. It's just you're alone here. Alone. That word again. People love that word when they want to move you somewhere. Behind him, Melissa, my daughter-in-law, was pretending to scroll through her phone, though I noticed she hadn't moved her thumb in at least 20 seconds. I manage, I said, stirring my tea slowly. The bills are paid. The pipes don't leak. The roof hasn't collapsed. By all measurable standards, I'm doing quite well. Melissa finally looked up. It's just that places like Silver Pines have full-time staff, she said, her voice smooth, rehearsed. Medical support, meals prepared, social activities. And how much does Silver Pines cost these days? I asked. There it was. A pause, a small one, barely noticeable to someone who wasn't paying attention. But I've spent 40 years reviewing contracts as a procurement officer for the city. I know what hesitation sounds like when money is involved. Oh, it depends, Daniel said quickly. Around 5, maybe 6,000 a month. 6,000, I repeated. That's $72,000 a year. I took a sip of tea. Too hot. Burned my tongue slightly. Expensive way to eat overcooked chicken and play bingo, I said. Melissa laughed. A little too loudly. You're funny, Harold. No, I'm observant. The kitchen smelled faintly of toast and something synthetic. Melissa's vanilla-scented hand lotion. It didn't belong in this house. Eleanor had preferred lemon. Clean. Honest. I glanced at the refrigerator. Stainless steel. Replaced in 2019. I paid $2,300 for it, including delivery. Still works perfectly. Everything in that house worked perfectly, which made their concern interesting. Daniel walked over to the window, looking out at the backyard. Houses in this area are going for crazy prices right now, he said casually. The Henderson place down the street sold for $940,000 last month. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I set the spoon down. Carefully, precisely. The small clink against the ceramic sounded louder than it should have. Is that so? I said. Yeah, he continued, warming up now. And yours is bigger. Corner lot, updated kitchen. You could easily get $1 million, maybe more. There it was. Not safety, not loneliness, not concern. Real estate. I turned to face him fully. And what would I do with $1 million, Daniel? I asked. He shrugged. Well, you wouldn't have to worry about anything. We'd help manage it. Make sure it lasts. We manage. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Like a door quietly closing. I see, I said. Melissa stepped in again too quickly. We're just thinking about what's best for you, Harold. That's all. Of course you are. That's what people always say right before they take something. I looked around the kitchen. The oak cabinets I installed myself in 2004. The small scratch on the floor near the stove where Eleanor dropped a cast iron pan. The clock above the door that ran 5 minutes fast for the past 10 years. This house was not an asset. It was a record. Every wall, every debt, every receipt filed neatly in the drawer by the hallway. Property taxes, insurance, repairs. I knew every number. Purchase price in 1988, $186,000. Total renovations over the years, approximately $214,000. Current estimated value, apparently somewhere near $1 million. Funny how people start doing math when you get old. I'll think about it, I said finally. Daniel nodded, relieved. Too relieved. That's all we're asking. No, that's not all you're asking. But I let it go, for now, because I've learned something over the years. When people think you're slow, they stop hiding things. And I was beginning to suspect that my son and his wife had a lot they weren't hiding very well at all. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. They did not bring it up again for 3 days. That, more than anything, told me they were serious. People who speak carelessly repeat themselves. People with a plan. Wait. Thursday morning, March 15 th.8:10 a.m. I was in my study, the small room off the hallway where Eleanor used to keep her sewing machine. I never moved it. The machine sat under a dust cover, exactly where she left it in November of 2021. Sometimes I would lift the fabric just to look at it, as if it might start humming again on its own. On the desk in front of me, my checkbook, a stack of utility bills, and my laptop. Old Dell, bought in 2017. Still slower than it should be, but reliable. Like most things that aren't designed to impress anyone. I was reviewing my bank statement. I do that every Thursday. Same time, same chair, same pair of reading glasses with a slightly bent frame. Routine keeps a man honest and alive. At first, nothing unusual. Electric bill, $142.67. Water, $58.12. Internet, $79.99. Then I saw it. A transfer. March 10th, Sunday, $4,800. Silver Pines Senior Living Deposit. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I blinked. Once. Twice. No, that wasn't possible. I don't make transfers on Sundays. And I certainly don't send nearly $5,000 to a place I've only heard about over tea and false concern. I adjusted my glasses and leaned closer. Confirmed transaction. Not pending. Completed. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not panic. Clarity. Slowly, very carefully, I opened the drawer to my right and took out the folder labeled bank authorization. 19. I remember that year. Knee surgery. 3 weeks barely able to move properly. Daniel had insisted. Just temporary, Dad. In case something happens. In case something happens. I flipped through the papers until I found it. There it was. Authorized user. Daniel Harper. Limited access. Bill payments. Transfers. I let out a short breath through my nose. Limited, I said quietly. $5,000 didn't feel very limited. Footsteps approached down the hallway. Light, quick, confident. Melissa. She didn't knock. She never knocks. Oh, good, you're up, she said, stepping into the room with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. I was going to make you some oatmeal. I've already had breakfast, I replied, not turning from the screen. That was a lie, but it served its purpose. She walked closer, her heels tapping softly against the wooden floor. I spoke to Silver Pines yesterday, she said, as if continuing a conversation we were already having. They have a beautiful room available. Garden view, very peaceful. I clicked the mouse. The bank statement remained open. Yes, I said. I see that. A pause, just a fraction longer than necessary. What do you mean? She asked. I turned the laptop slightly toward her and tapped the screen. This, I said. She leaned in. For a moment, just a moment, her expression slipped. Gone was the concern. Gone was the softness. What remained was calculation. Oh, she said quickly, recovering. Yes, that. We didn't want to worry you with the details. Of course not. Of course, I repeated. Why would I need to know where my money's going? It's just a deposit, she said smoothly. They require it to hold the room. It's refundable. Refundable. That word again. People love refundable when they're spending someone else's money. And you felt comfortable authorizing that. I asked, well, Daniel has access to the account, she said. You agreed to that. I nodded slowly. Yes, I did. Silence filled the room for a few seconds. Hip, thick. Then she smiled again. We're just trying to make things easier for you, Harold. Easier. I closed the laptop. The soft click sounded final. Melissa, I said, folding my hands on the desk. When exactly was I planning to move into this beautiful room? She hesitated again. Soon, she said. We thought maybe early April. The 2nd or 3rd. Before the rates go up. Before the rates go up. Naturally. And my house? I asked. Her eyes flickered. Just slightly. What about it? Who's handling that? Oh, we haven't finalized anything, she said quickly. But Daniel has been talking to a realtor. Just exploring options. Exploring. I stood up slowly. My knees protested, but I ignored them. At 74, you learn to move deliberately. It makes people underestimate how steady you really are. I'd like to see the paperwork, I said. What paperwork? The realtor. The deposit agreement. Any documents with my name on them? Her smile tightened. Of course. Daniel has everything. He'll show you tonight. Tonight. Always later. Always deferred. I walked past her into the hallway. The house felt different now. Smaller, somehow. Not physically. Ownership changes the way space feels. In the kitchen, I pour myself another cup of tea. This time, I let it cool before drinking. At 8:47 a.m., I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Carter and Bloom Legal Services. A woman's voice answered. Yes, I said, watching the steam rise from my cup. This is Harold Bennett. I'd like to schedule a consultation. Of course, Mr. Bennett. What is this regarding? I took a slow sip. Unauthorized financial activity, I said, and potentially something larger. There was a brief pause. I see. When would you like to come in? As soon as possible. I ended the call and set the phone down carefully. From the living room, I could hear Melissa on her own phone now. Her voice was lower, sharper. He saw it, she whispered. A pause. No, it's fine. Just tonight. We'll handle it tonight. I allowed myself a small, humorless smile. Yes, I imagined we would. I did not confront them that evening. That would have been a mistake. Anger is expensive. It costs you clarity, timing leverage. I learned that back in 1997 when a contractor tried to overcharge the city by $82,000 on a bridge repair project. He shouted. I waited. In the end, he lost the contract and paid penalties. People always reveal more when they think they still have control. So at 6:15 p.m., when Daniel arrived with a folder in his hand and that same practiced seriousness on his face, I was already sitting in the living room, watching the evening news at a volume slightly lower than usual. Appear normal. That's the first rule. Dad, he said, loosening his tie, we should talk. We should, I agreed, not looking away from the television immediately. Melissa followed behind him, carrying her laptop. Silver. New. Probably $1,800, judging by the model. They sat across from me. A presentation. Of course. Daniel opened the folder and spread several documents across the coffee table. Crisp pages. Clean margins. The smell of fresh ink. Okay, he began, slipping into his professional tone. We've been doing some research, and we really believe this is the best path forward. Forward. Always forward. Never whose direction. I muted the television and leaned slightly forward. Go on, I said. He slid the first document toward me. Silver Pines Residency Agreement. Deposit received. $4,800. Monthly fee. $5,950. Start date. April 3rd, 2024. Neat. Efficient. Already decided. I thought we were still discussing this, I said calmly. We are. Melissa interjected quickly. This just secures the option. Options that cost $5,000 tend to be more than options. Daniel placed another document in front of me. This one had a familiar logo at the top. Harrison and Cole Realty. Property evaluation. Estimated market value. $1,020,000 to $1,080,000. I let out a low whistle. Well, I said, I seem to have done better than I thought. Daniel smiled, relieved. Exactly. That's what we've been saying. This is an opportunity. For whom? I asked. The smile faltered. For all of us, he said carefully. There it was again. All of us. Melissa turned her laptop toward me. A listing draft. Photos of my house, my kitchen, my backyard. Even the scratch on the floor near the stove was visible in one of the images. They hadn't even bothered to edit it out. When were these taken? I asked. Oh, just last week, she said. While you were at your doctor's appointment. Of course. Efficient use of time. I nodded slowly, taking it all in. Have you already signed anything with a realtor? I asked. Daniel hesitated. A preliminary agreement, he said. Nothing binding. Nothing binding is usually the most binding kind of statement. I see, I said. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable. Then I asked the question that mattered. And where exactly do I go after April 3rd? Daniel blinked. What do you mean? Silver Pines. No, I said. I mean financially. Another pause. Melissa jumped in. Well, the house sale would give you liquidity. Over $1 million. We'd help manage it, invest it, make sure it lasts. We? I repeated. Yes, Daniel said. It's just practical, Dad. You don't want to deal with all that at your age. At your age. I folded my hand again. Daniel, I said quietly. How much do you currently have in your savings account? He frowned. What does that have to do with anything? Humor me. He shifted in his seat. I don't know. Around $30,000. And your mortgage? I continued. About $420,000 left. And the business loan? I asked. Melissa's head snapped slightly toward him. What business loan? She said. Interesting. Daniel cleared his throat. It's not a big deal. Just some expansion capital. About $180,000. I nodded slowly. So, there it was. $600,000 in liabilities. And suddenly, my $1 million house looked less like security and more like a solution. I see, I said again. Silence settled heavily over the room. Melissa recovered first. This isn't about us, she said sharply. This is about your well-being. Of course it is. It always is, I replied. I stood up carefully. I'll need some time to review these documents, I said. Of course, Daniel said quickly. Take your time. But we should move fast. The market. Daniel? He stopped. Yes. I said I will review them. My voice was calm, flat, but something in it made him nod. Right. Of course. They gathered their things a few minutes later. Melissa's laptop snapped shut with a soft click. Daniel stacked the papers neatly, leaving them on the table like an offering, or a trap. By 7:05 p.m., they were gone. The house was quiet again. I waited until 7:30 before moving. Then I took the documents, walked to my study, and laid everything out on the desk under the lamp. Every page, every clause, every signature line. At 8:12 p.m. I found it. A draft. Not finalized, not yet signed, but prepared. Durable power of attorney. Harold Bennett, Daniel Harper. Effective upon medical determination of incapacity. Attached. Preliminary physician assessment request. I felt something rise in my chest then. Not anger. Not even betrayal. Something colder. Something precise. They weren't just planning to move me. They were preparing to declare me incapable. Legally. Efficient. Clean. Irreversible if done properly. I sat down slowly. At 8:27 p.m., I picked the phone again and dialed another number. Carter and Bloom. The same voice answered. Yes, I said. This is Harold Bennett again. I'll need more than a consultation. A pause. What exactly do you need, Mr. Bennett? I looked at the documents spread across my desk. At minimum, I said, asset protection, revocation of account access, and a new estate structure. Another pause. Longer this time. I understand, she said carefully. We can arrange that. When can you come? Tomorrow morning, I replied. 9 a.m. I hung up and leaned back in my chair. From somewhere deep in the house, the old clock struck 9. Slow, measured, certain. They thought they were planning my future. But what they didn't understand, what they had never understood, was this. I had spent my entire life managing risks, and they had just made themselves the largest liability I had ever seen. The meeting was scheduled for Monday, March 18th, at 11:00 a.m. Daniel insisted on it. Just to finalize everything, he said over the phone the night before, his voice carefully neutral. The realtor, the paperwork, Silver Pines. They all need confirmation. Confirmation. I agreed without hesitation. Of course, I told him. It's time we put things in order. That seemed to please him. It always does when people think you've finally become reasonable. At 10:45 a.m., the house was already too full. Melissa was in the kitchen, arranging cups on a tray she had no intention of using. The smell of her artificial vanilla filled the air again, clinging to the walls like something stubborn. Daniel stood near the window, speaking in low tones with a man in a navy suit, mid-40s, polished shoes, the kind of smile that comes with commission percentages. Harrison and Cole. I heard him say, top firm in the area. Of course, At the dining table sat another man, older, gray hair, thin glasses, lawyer, not mine. He had already spread out documents in neat, symmetrical stacks, tabs, sticky notes, prepared signatures, efficient. I entered the room at exactly 10:58 a.m. No one noticed at first. I took my usual seat at the head of the table. The wood creaked slightly beneath my hands. Same sound it had made for 20 years. Finally, Daniel turned. "Dad," he said, smiling too quickly. "Perfect timing." "I try," I replied. The realtor stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mark Ellison," he said. "It's an honor. Your son has told me a lot about the property." "I'm sure he has," I said, shaking his hand briefly. The lawyer followed. "Richard Hale," he said. "I'll be assisting with the transition." Transition. Such a polite word for displacement. We all sat. Papers were pushed toward me. "This is the listing agreement," Mark began. "We've priced the property at $1,075,000 to generate competitive interest. Based on current demand, we expect multiple offers within." "Before we begin," I said. My voice was not loud, but it stopped everything. Daniel shifted. "Dad, maybe we should let them." "No," I said. "We should not." Silence settled across the table. Even Melissa stopped moving. I folded my hands. "Mr. Ellison," I said, turning to the realtor, "how long have you been working on selling my house?" He blinked. "Well, we've been in preliminary discussions for about 2 weeks. I suggested. He glanced at Daniel. "Yes, approximately. And during those 2 weeks," I continued, "did anyone mention that I had not agreed to sell?" Another pause. Uncomfortable this time. "I was under the impression," he began. "Of course you were," I said. I turned to the lawyer. "Mr. Hale, have you prepared documents regarding power of attorney?" His fingers tightened slightly on the papers. "There is a draft, yes," he admitted. "Based on what medical assessment?" I asked. Now Daniel leaned forward. "Dad, you're overcomplicating this." "No," I said quietly. "I'm simplifying it." I reached into the folder beside me. Not theirs. Mine. Carter and Bloom. Heavy paper. Clean lettering. Proper documentation. I placed it on the table and slid it forward. "What is that?" Melissa asked. "You'll see," I said. Daniel opened the folder. I watched his face as he read. Confusion first. Then tension. Then something sharper. "What is this?" he said, his voice tightening. "A revocation," I replied. "Effective as of this morning, 9:12 a.m. your access to my accounts has been terminated." Silence. Complete. Even the clock seemed to pause. "You can't just," he started. "I already have," I said. I turned to the realtor. "I will not be selling this house." Mark shifted in his seat. "Well, without your authorization." "There is none," I said. He nodded slowly, already calculating his exit. Smart man. I turned to the lawyer. "And any attempt to establish power of attorney based on fraudulent or manipulated medical claims will be met with legal action." Mr. Hale cleared his throat. "I would advise we pause." "I agree," I said. Then I looked at Daniel. Really looked at him. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, 8 years old, holding a toy truck, asking me how engines worked. That boy was gone. What sat across from me now was a man doing math. Cold math. "You went behind my back," he said finally. "No," I replied. "I caught up to you." Melissa stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "After everything we've done for you." "Name one thing," I said. She froze. "One thing," I repeated. "That wasn't paid for with my money." Her mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. Daniel slammed the folder shut. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You can't manage all of this alone." I leaned back in my chair. "I managed it before you learned how to write your name," I said. The room had shifted now. The balance was different. They felt desperation has a smell, subtle, bitter. It was in the air. "I was prepared to help you," I continued, "within reason, within honesty." I paused, "But you chose something else." No one spoke. Finally, Mark stood up. "I think it's best I leave," he said. "Wise decision," I replied. The lawyer followed soon after, gathering his papers with quiet efficiency. By 11:42 a.m., it was just the three of us again. Daniel looked at me, his jaw tight. "This isn't over," he said. I met his gaze. "No," I agreed. "It isn't." Because what he still didn't understand What neither of them understood yet was that this had never been about stopping him. It was about what came next. They did not leave immediately. That would have required dignity. Instead, they lingered in the dining room like people who had misplaced something important and refused to admit it. Melissa paced first. Short, sharp steps across the hardwood floor, back and forth between the table and the window. Her phone was in her hand, but she wasn't using it, just holding it, like a prop. Daniel stayed seated. That was new. He had always been the one in motion, deciding, directing, closing. Now he just sat there, staring at the folder from Carter and Bloom as if it might rearrange itself into something more favorable. Finally, at 11:51 a.m., he spoke. "You talked to a lawyer," he said. "Yes." "When?" "Friday morning, 09:00 a.m. He nodded slowly, absorbing that. So this was planned. I allowed myself the smallest pause. "Yes," I said. "It was—" Melissa stopped pacing. "Oh, that's rich," she snapped. "You're accusing us of planning something?" "I'm not accusing," I said calmly. "I'm describing." Daniel exhaled sharply and leaned back. "You know what this looks like?" he said. "Paranoia. You're isolating yourself, cutting off help." "Help?" I interrupted. "Yes, help," he snapped. "You think managing $1 million asset is simple? Taxes, investments, long-term care." "Ah," I said softly. "There it is again." He frowned. "What?" "That word. Asset." Silence. I stood up and walked slowly to the sideboard. The same one Eleanor insisted we buy in 2002, after saving for nearly a year. Cherry wood. Solid. Still holds. I opened the drawer and took out a single envelope. White. Thick paper. My name printed neatly in the corner. I turned back to them. "This arrived this morning," I said. Melissa crossed her arms. "What is it?" "Something you should hear." I didn't hand it to them. Instead, I opened it myself. Inside was a formal notice. Stamped. Signed. Delivered at 8:32 a.m. I unfolded the paper and read aloud. "Notice of financial review and loan reassessment. Harper Logistics, LLC." Daniel went very still. "What?" he said. I continued. "Outstanding loan balance. $183,400. Collateral review initiated due to irregular activity and risk exposure. Deadline for additional guarantees. March 25th, 2024. The room shifted again, but this time it shifted away from them. I lowered the paper and looked at my son. "You didn't mention that deadline," I said. His face had changed. The confidence was gone now, replaced by something tighter, thinner. "That's temporary," he said. "Just bank procedure." "Of course," I replied. "Banks are known for their casual procedures." Melissa stepped forward. "How do you even have that?" she demanded. I folded the paper carefully. "They sent it to me." "Why would they send it to you?" she asked. I met her eyes. "Because," I said, "your husband listed my property as a potential supporting asset during his last financial disclosure." Silence. Absolute. Daniel stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. "That's not what it," he started. "That is exactly what it means," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You were preparing to use my house," I continued, "to secure your debt, while simultaneously arranging to remove me from it." Melissa looked at him now. Not at me. At him. "You said it was under control," she said quietly. "It is," he snapped. "I just needed time." "Time you're buying with my name," I said. He turned on me. "I was trying to fix things," he shouted. "For all of us." "There is no all of us, Daniel." The words landed hard, clean, final. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I placed the letter on the table, next to their documents. Neat. Aligned. "Now," I said, "let me explain what happens next." Daniel stared at me. Melissa didn't move. At 9:12 this morning, I continued, "your access to my accounts was revoked." At 9:30, a new estate structure was filed. Irrevocable. His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "that this house, along with the majority of my liquid assets, approximately $1.3 million, in case you're still doing the math, has been transferred into a protected trust." Melissa inhaled sharply. "A trust," she repeated. "Yes." "Controlled by whom?" Daniel asked. "Not you." That answer seemed to settle something. Not relief. Understanding. Slow. Painful understanding. You cuss out, he said. I shook my head slightly. No, I replied. You removed yourselves. Silence again. Different this time. Quieter. Almost hollow. I gave you access, I continued. I trusted you to act in good faith. Instead, you treated my life like a balance sheet. I gestured toward the papers. Assets. Liabilities. Timelines. Daniel looked down. He didn't argue, because there was nothing left to argue. The trust will cover my expenses, I said, including any care I may actually require. On my terms, not yours. Melissa's voice came out thin. And us. I considered that for a moment. Not long. You, I said, will manage your own affairs. Daniel let out a short, bitter laugh. So that's it? You just walk away? I met his gaze one last time. No, I said. I stay. I looked around the house, at the walls, at the table, at the life that had been built piece by piece, payment by payment, year by year. This, I said quietly, was never yours to take. No one spoke after that. At 12:14 p.m., they left. No slammed doors. No final words. Just silence. And when the house settled again, truly settled, for the first time in weeks, I poured myself another cup of tea. This time, I didn't let it go cold. The house sounded different after they left. Not quieter. No, silence had always lived here. I had grown used to it after Eleanor passed. Silence can be companionable if you know its habits. But this was something else. It was settled, as if the walls themselves had been waiting for a decision. Tuesday, March 19th, th. 7:05 a.m. I woke up earlier than usual. No alarm, no reason, just a kind of internal clarity that doesn't ask permission. The kitchen felt the same. The kettle still clicked at exactly the same second. The window still fogged slightly in the corners. Outside, the neighbor's dog barked twice. Same as every morning. Routine had survived. That mattered. I sat at the table and opened my ledger. Yes, an actual paper ledger. Columns, dates, numbers written in ink. I had started it in 1988, the year we bought this house. Back when every dollar needed to be accounted for twice. Once in the bank, once in your own hand. March 2024. I wrote carefully. March 18th, legal restructuring completed. Trust established. Unauthorized access revoked. Then I paused. After a moment, I added one more line. Correction of prior misjudgment. That seemed accurate. At 9:17 a.m., the phone rang. I let it ring twice before answering. Harold Bennett, I said. Silence. Then Daniel. Dad. His voice sounded different. Not softer. Not kinder. Just reduced. Yes, I said. There was a pause. I spoke to the bank, he said. They're reviewing everything. I'm aware. Another pause. They're asking for additional collateral, he continued. Short term, just to stabilize things. Of course they were. That sounds like their prerogative, I said. Dad, he said. And now there was something else in his voice. Not authority, not even frustration. Need. I just need a little time, he said. If you could, just temporarily. No, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't hesitate. Just, no. Silence filled the line. You're really going to do this, he said finally. Already did. You'd let me lose everything? I considered that. Carefully. Then I answered. No, I said. You did that yourself. The line went quiet again. For a moment, I thought he might say something else. Apologize. Explain. Justify. But there are moments in life where people understand very clearly that words will not change the outcome. This was one of them. I see, he said. And then the call ended. The second call came 2 days later. March 21, ST.2:43 p.m. Different number. Mr. Bennett? A man's voice asked. Yes. This is Andrew Collins from First National Bank. I'm calling regarding a financial disclosure submitted by your son, Daniel Harper. I assumed you might. A brief pause. We'd like to clarify your involvement, he said carefully, specifically regarding the property listed as potential collateral. There is no involvement, I said. That property is held in a protected trust. It is not available for any external obligation. I see, he said. Paper shuffled on his end. In that case, he continued, we'll proceed accordingly. I imagine you will. Another pause. For what it's worth, Mr. Bennett, he added, you handled this correctly. I almost smiled. Almost. Experience, I said. Life after that became precise. Not lonely, not empty, just clear. I met with Carter and Bloom twice more. Adjusted a few details. Allocated funds for long-term care, not in Silver Pines, but through a private arrangement. A nurse who comes twice a week, properly paid, properly documented. No surprises, no family management. The house remained mine, legally, practically, entirely. I fixed a loose hinge on the back door on March 25th. Took me 40 minutes. The screwdriver slipped twice. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be. Still, did it. On April 2nd, the date they had chosen for my move, I sat in the backyard with a cup of tea and watched the sunlight move across the fence line. No boxes, no packing, no transition, just the sound of wind in the trees Eleanor planted 20 years ago. I heard things, of course. Information travels. Daniel's company downsized rapidly. The bank restructured his loan, not in his favor. Melissa left her job 2 weeks later. Stress, I was told. They sold their own house in June for less than they expected. There's a kind of symmetry in that. The last time I saw my son was in July, by accident. Grocery store, 12 p.m. I remember, because I was deciding between 2 brands of tea. He looked older, not physically, but in the way people do when certainty leaves them. We stood there for a moment. No anger, no warmth, just recognition. You look well, he said. I am, I replied. He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. Then he walked away. No request, no apology, no performance, just distance. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again. Same mug, same light, same house. I opened the ledger one more time. July 14th. I wrote, all accounts balanced. I closed the book, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I needed to check it again, because some debts aren't financial, and the only way to settle them is to stop paying. Stories like this happen more often than we think. By the way, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state below. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel.